The folder slammed shut like a gunshot. Then came Austin Pierce's voice, cutting through the boardroom silence like a blade through paper. Effective immediately, Michael Richardson is terminated from his position as Chief Technology Officer. I'm Mike Richardson, 52 years old, and I'd just been fired in front of 12 executives who'd been kissing my ass for the past 8 years. The room went dead quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Austin didn't even look at me, just stared at his notes like he was reading the weather forecast. To him, I wasn't a person who'd built TechCore Industries' entire autonomous AI framework from scratch. I was just an obstacle to remove. I felt my face get hot, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of losing it. I gathered my papers, stood up, and said one word that seemed to unsettle everyone in that room. Thanks. A couple people shifted in their chairs. They probably thought I was being sarcastic or broken, but they had no idea what I really meant. See, Austin Pierce was 35, fresh MBA from Harvard, and Daddy's money had bought him a seat on our board before he talked his way into the CEO chair. Guy had never written a line of code in his life, but he sure loved throwing around words like digital transformation and AI-first strategy. Me? I'd been in tech for 25 years. Started as a junior developer in 1998, right before the dot-com boom exploded. I was working at a startup called Data Flow Solutions when the market crashed in 2001, watched our funding dry up overnight. CEO called an all-hands meeting on a Tuesday morning and told us we had 2 weeks left before shutdown. That's when I learned my first lesson about corporate survival. Never put all your eggs in someone else's basket. I spent the next year freelancing, picking up contracts, learning that your skills are only as secure as the legal structure protecting them. Made it through the 2008 financial crisis, when half the companies in Silicon Valley went under. I was at Systemdyne then, and we lost 60% of our clients in 3 months. But I'd been smart. Kept my most valuable work under separate intellectual property agreements. When Systemdyne folded, I walked away with my innovations intact and a job offer from TechCore. What Austin didn't know was that I'd applied those hard-learned lessons here too. 2 years ago, when our board was cutting budgets and talking about right-sizing, I'd gotten smart, real smart. I'd moved our core AI patents into a separate entity, Richardson Tech Solutions, my entity. Legal as sunshine, all properly documented, approved by the same board that just watched me get canned. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how a 35-year-old MBA tried to destroy me, and how I ended up walking away with $900 million. The AI framework wasn't just some software package. We're talking about 8 years of deep learning algorithms, neural network architectures, and machine learning models that could optimize supply chains for Fortune 500 companies in real time. The kind of technology that processes millions of data points per second and makes decisions that save companies tens of millions annually. When I started building it back in 2015, cloud computing was just hitting its stride. But most companies were still running legacy systems that couldn't handle modern AI workloads. I designed our framework to bridge that gap, containerized microservices that could deploy on any infrastructure, with APIs that integrated seamlessly with existing enterprise software. The core innovation was our autonomous decision-making engine. Instead of requiring constant human oversight, our AI could analyze market trends, supplier performance, logistics costs, and demand forecasting to make supply chain adjustments automatically. Think Amazon's fulfillment system, but available to any company willing to pay for it. By 2023, we were managing supply chains for 40 major corporations, processing over $600 million worth of inventory decisions monthly. The technology was valued at $600 million on our books, but its revenue potential was easily 10 times that. Austin had joined the board 18 months ago, brought in by venture capital firm Morrison & Associates. His father was a managing partner there, and they'd led our Series C funding round. Austin talked a good game about scaling opportunities and market penetration strategies, but it was clear he'd never built anything more complex than a PowerPoint presentation. The board bought into his vision because he spoke their language. ROI projections, synergy opportunities, competitive advantages. They didn't understand the technical complexity behind what we'd built. To them, software was software. Austin convinced them that any competent engineering team could maintain and improve the system. That was his first mistake. After that boardroom humiliation, I sat in my car for about 20 minutes. My phone started buzzing with texts from my team. Ryan Foster, my best senior engineer, wrote, "What the hell just happened? Are we supposed to keep working on the deployment?" Ryan was 28, MIT graduate, one of the smartest machine learning specialists I'd ever worked with. I'd hired him straight out of his PhD program and spent 3 years mentoring him on large-scale AI implementation. Kid could debug neural network architectures in his sleep, but he'd never dealt with corporate politics before. Linda Martinez from finance sent, "Mike, I'm so sorry. This is insane." Linda had been CFO for 5 years, joined us from Amazon's AWS division. She understood both the technical and business sides of what we were building. More importantly, she knew exactly how the patent licensing agreements worked because she'd helped structure them. Even my younger brother Alex called. He runs a startup in Austin, autonomous vehicle navigation systems. "Mike, you okay? This doesn't make sense." Alex was 48, also a tech veteran, but he'd chosen the entrepreneur route instead of the corporate ladder. His company, Navigate AI, developed real-time mapping algorithms for self-driving cars. We'd actually collaborated on some projects. My supply chain optimization algorithms helped his company manage their hardware procurement. The thing that got to me wasn't the firing. Hell, I'd been laid off before. It was watching my team panic. These were good engineers, some of the smartest people I'd ever worked with. Ryan wasn't just an employee. He was like the son I'd never had, carrying forward everything I'd learned about building scalable AI systems. But they all sounded like they thought their careers were over. I went home to my wife Karen and told her what happened. We'd been married 23 years, met back when I was contracting for Boeing and she was finishing her nursing degree. She'd watched me navigate 3 major career transitions, seen me lose jobs and start over multiple times. She poured me a scotch and said what she always says. "Everything happens for a reason, Mike. You've got more tricks up your sleeve than they know." She was right, but even I didn't know how right until 3 days later. Austin had scheduled a big demo for our investors on Thursday morning, 3 days after my firing. TechCore's autonomous AI framework was supposed to be the star of the show. Our biggest clients were Fortune 500 companies, and this demo was make or break for our Series D funding round. Morrison & Associates had flown in from New York, Sequoia Capital sent their senior partners from Menlo Park, and Goldman Sachs' tech investment team was sitting front row. I wasn't there, obviously, but Ryan texted me play-by-play updates from the back of the conference room. 9:15 a.m. Demo starting. Conference room packed with money guys. Austin looks confident. 9:32 a.m. System won't initialize, getting error messages, tech team scrambling. 9:45 a.m. Austin looks like he's going to throw up. Main screen just says, "License authorization expired. Contact Richardson Tech Solutions." I sat there in my home office reading these updates, my coffee getting cold. The system was doing exactly what I'd designed it to do: protect itself. See, when I'd moved those patents 2 years ago, I'd built in multiple fail-safes. The core licensing framework required periodic authorization from the patent holder. That's Richardson Tech Solutions, my company. If the original architect was terminated without proper transition protocols, all licensing would automatically revert back to my entity. The legal mechanism was buried in subsection 7.2.1 of the Intellectual Property Transfer Agreement, the same document Austin's board had signed off on during our budget restructuring. My lawyer, Tom Bradley, had crafted it specifically to protect against hostile takeovers or sudden management changes. 10:20 a.m. Complete meltdown. Investors asking hard questions. Austin blaming DevOps team. 10:45 a.m. Someone from Goldman just asked if TechCore actually owns the technology they're trying to demo. Austin went silent. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. Austin had fired me for being redundant and resistant to change. Now the system was proving exactly how redundant I wasn't. But the technical failure was just the beginning. What Austin didn't realize was that our AI framework wasn't just software sitting on servers. It was actively managing supply chains for 40 major corporations at that exact moment. Walmart's East Coast distribution network, BMW's parts procurement system, Costco's inventory optimization algorithms. When the licensing expired, those systems didn't just stop working. They reverted to manual processes that hadn't been used in 3 years. Suddenly, supply chain managers who'd been relying on AI-driven decisions were staring at blank dashboards and ringing phones. Ryan's next text came at 11:30 a.m. Clients are calling. Walmart's distribution center in Pennsylvania is down. They can't process incoming shipments. By noon, it was a full crisis. TechCore's customer support lines were jammed. Austin had locked himself in his office, probably calling every lawyer he could think of. The investors had left the building by 12:30, and I could imagine the conversations happening in their Ubers back to the airport. Linda Martinez called me that afternoon. "Mike, this is insane. Austin's brought in 3 different law firms to review the IP agreements. They're all telling him the same thing. Everything's legal and ironclad. How's the team handling it?" Ryan's been fielding calls from clients all day. He keeps telling them he can't fix anything without authorization codes that only you have. Some of these companies are losing millions per hour in delayed shipments. That hit me harder than I expected. BMW's manufacturing plant in South Carolina relied on just-in-time parts delivery optimized by our algorithms. If their supply chain was disrupted, they'd have to shut down production lines. That meant thousands of workers sent home, suppliers scrambling to adjust schedules, ripple effects throughout the automotive industry. "Linda, I need you to do something. Get me a list of all active client integrations. I want to know exactly which companies are affected and how severely." "Mike, I can't just hand over internal—" "You're not handing it over to a competitor. You're giving it to the patent holder who's trying to minimize damage to innocent parties." She was quiet for a moment. "I'll send it within the hour." The list was worse than I'd imagined. 43 companies across retail, manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare. Combined, they processed over $800 million in daily transactions through our optimization algorithms. Without the AI framework, they were operating blind. That evening, my doorbell rang. Karen answered and came back looking confused. "Mike, there's a young man here from your old company. Says his name is Ryan." Ryan Foster stood on my front porch looking like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect engineer appearance was disheveled. Wrinkled shirt, messy hair, exhaustion written all over his face. "Mike, we need to talk." I brought him into my study and poured him a scotch. Kid probably needed it. "This is a disaster," he said without preamble. "Walmart's threatening to terminate our contract. BMW's already pulled their account. Austin's running around like his hair's on fire and nobody knows how to fix anything." "Ryan, I built those fail-safes for a reason. Austin thought he could just fire the architect and keep the building standing. But it's not just Austin who's getting hurt. Our entire team is getting blamed for the system failure. 3 engineers got put on administrative leave today pending investigation. They're treating us like we sabotaged something. That made my blood boil. These were good people who'd followed my lead for years. They didn't deserve to get caught in Austin's incompetence. What's Austin saying about restoring access? He keeps insisting TechCore owns the technology and that you're somehow illegally blocking system functions. Legal team spent all afternoon explaining why that's wrong, but he won't listen. Ryan pulled out his phone and showed me an email Austin had sent to the entire company. "Due to technical difficulties beyond our control, client systems are temporarily unavailable. We are working with external vendors to restore full functionality." External vendors. He was talking about me like I was some random contractor instead of the person who'd built everything from the ground up. "Mike, I have to ask, is there any way to restore limited access, just enough to keep the critical systems running? Some of these companies are going to suffer real damage if this continues." I'd been thinking about this all afternoon. The patent structure gave me complete control, but that control came with responsibility. BMW workers didn't deserve to lose wages because their CEO was dealing with an incompetent tech vendor. "There might be a way," I said slowly, "but it would require Austin to acknowledge some uncomfortable truths." The next morning my phone rang at 7 a.m. Human Resources. "Mike, hi, how are you holding up?" Same fake cheerful voice from Sarah Walsh, HR Director. "Listen, there's been some discussion about bringing you back. Maybe we moved too fast with the leadership transition." "Sarah, cut the bullshit. You're calling because half your clients are threatening lawsuits. Well, yes, there have been some operational challenges. But we'd love to discuss a consulting arrangement, maybe help with the transition while we bring new technical leadership up to speed." "How much?" "We're thinking $200,000 for a 30-day consulting engagement, plus stock options." I almost laughed. $200,000 to fix a crisis that was costing clients millions per day. Not interested. "Okay, what about $500,000? "We're very motivated to resolve this quickly." "Sarah, you're still not understanding the situation. You don't have enough money to hire me back. I'm sorry. You fired me, publicly, in front of people I'd worked with for 8 years. Austin treated me like I was some old piece of equipment he could just throw away and replace. Now you want me to fix his mess for consulting fees?" The silence stretched out. I could hear her breathing, probably looking at notes someone had prepared for this call. "What would it take?" she finally asked. It would take Austin Pierce personally apologizing to me and my team. It would take the board acknowledging that they made a mistake. It would take guarantees that my people won't face any retaliation. And even then, I'm not sure I'd be interested. Mike, please, be reasonable. Companies are losing millions. Then maybe Austin should have thought about that before he decided to play power games with technology he didn't understand. I hung up before she could respond. 2 days after I hung up on HR, I got an email that changed everything. The sender wasn't TechCore. It was a name I hadn't seen in 5 years. Brian Anderson at Nexus Systems Corp. Mike, the email read, heard about the situation. If you're open to coffee, we should talk. Brian. Brian had worked with me at TechCore from 2017 to 2019, back when we were still building the core AI algorithms. Brilliant systems architect, MBA from Northwestern, understood both the technical and business sides better than most. Austin had pushed him out during one of his early organizational restructurings, claiming Brian was resistant to new methodologies. Translation: Brian had called Austin an idiot to his face during a board meeting. Nexus was TechCore's biggest competitor in the enterprise AI space. They'd been trying to build something like our autonomous framework for 4 years with limited success. Their systems were good, but they lacked the deep learning sophistication and real-time optimization capabilities we'd developed. I knew what Brian wanted, but I was curious how he'd approach it. We met at a Starbucks in downtown Seattle on Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Austin had fired me. Brian looked good. Success agreed with him. Gray suit, confident posture, the kind of presence that comes from being valued by people who understand what you do. Austin's an idiot, he said right off the bat, before I'd even sat down. Always was. But you built something extraordinary at TechCore. Built being the key word. Brian smiled and slid a tablet across the table. Mike, let me be direct. We've been following the news. System failures, client exodus, investor meetings gone sideways. Word is, Austin can't get the AI framework operational. On the screen was a financial analysis of TechCore's current situation. Stock price down 45% since the demo failure. 3 major clients had already terminated contracts. Employee retention was plummeting as engineers jumped ship. This is impressive research, I said. We do our homework. But here's what really interests us. We know you own the patents through Richardson Tech Solutions, we know the licensing structure you set up, and we know that autonomous AI framework is worth a lot more than TechCore's balance sheet shows. I sipped my coffee. That's unfortunate for TechCore. Mike, Nexus wants to acquire your patent portfolio. Full acquisition, not licensing. We're talking about building something bigger than what either company could accomplish alone. Brian pulled up another screen showing Nexus's current AI capabilities alongside technical specifications I recognized from our TechCore systems. They'd clearly done extensive analysis of our architecture. What kind of acquisition are we talking about? $900 million for the complete patent portfolio, plus a 5-year consulting agreement as our chief technology advisor at $3 million annually. You'd essentially be building the next generation of enterprise AI with proper resources and leadership that actually understands what you're creating. I stared at the numbers. $900 million. For patents that TechCore thought they owned but couldn't access. For work that Austin had dismissed as easily replaceable. This is a serious offer? Dead serious. Our board approved the budget last week. We've been planning this approach since we heard about your termination. But the system failures convinced us to accelerate the timeline. Brian leaned forward. Mike, think about it. At TechCore, you were fighting MBA bureaucrats who saw your work as a cost center. At Nexus, you'd be working with people who understand that advanced AI is the future of enterprise software. No more Austin Pierce-type executives treating you like an expendable employee. What's the timeline? Due diligence would take 2 to 3 weeks. Patent transfer and integration planning another 2 weeks. You could be our CTA by mid-November, with full authority over technical direction and team building. I thought about Ryan Foster and the other engineers stuck in TechCore's chaos. What about hiring people from my old team? Already considered. We'd want your key people. Ryan Foster, definitely. Linda Martinez if she's interested in a CFO role at a growing company. Anyone else you recommend? This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about building something better with people who deserve to work somewhere their skills were valued. I need time to think about it. Of course. But Mike, don't think too long. TechCore's situation is getting worse daily, and other companies are going to start circling soon. That night, Karen and I talked it through over dinner. She'd been watching the stress of the past week wear on me, seeing me question decisions I'd made and wondering if I should have handled things differently. "What's your gut telling you?" she asked. That Austin Pierce tried to throw away the best thing his company ever had. Now someone else gets to benefit from his arrogance. And the money? We'd been comfortable on my TechCore salary, but this was generational wealth. This was never having to worry about healthcare costs, college expenses for future grandkids, retirement planning. This was freedom. The money's nice, but it's really about the opportunity. Nexus has the resources and leadership to do this right. At TechCore, I was always fighting for budget, justifying every innovation to people who didn't understand the technology. At Nexus, I'd be building the future of AI with proper support. Then you know what to do. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Tom Bradley. We'd worked together since my System 9 days, and he'd structured the patent agreements that were now protecting me from Austin's incompetence. "Tom, I need you to review an acquisition offer, $900 million for the Richardson Tech Solutions patent portfolio." Jesus, Mike, that's a significant transaction. Who's the buyer? Nexus Systems. They want full acquisition plus a consulting agreement. We spent 3 hours going through every detail: patent valuations, technology transfer protocols, tax implications, employment agreements. Tom's team had prepared for this possibility when we'd originally structured Richardson Tech Solutions. "Everything looks solid," Tom said finally. "The valuation is aggressive but justified given the revenue potential of the AI framework. Nexus is getting exclusive access to technology that's already proven in enterprise environments." "What about TechCore? Any legal complications?" "None. The patents are cleanly held by Richardson Tech Solutions. TechCore's licensing agreement expired when you were terminated, exactly as designed. They have no legal claim to block this transaction. And the consulting agreement? Standard structure for technical advisory roles. You'd have significant autonomy over technology direction, team hiring, and project priorities. Much better than being an employee subject to executive whims. I called Brian back that afternoon. "Let's do it. Outstanding. I'll get our legal team started on due diligence paperwork. How soon can you be available for technical meetings?" "Immediately. But Brian, I want Ryan Foster and my other key people protected during this transition. TechCore might try to make them scapegoats for the system failures. Already handled. We're prepared to make immediate offers to any TechCore employees you recommend. They can be out of that toxic environment within 2 weeks." Friday afternoon, exactly 10 days after Austin had fired me, my doorbell rang. Austin Pierce was standing on my front porch in jeans and a golf shirt, looking like he hadn't slept since the investor demo. "Mike, we need to talk." I almost didn't let him in, but curiosity won out, and I wanted to hear what desperate pitch he'd prepared. Karen brought us coffee and then made herself scarce, probably sensing the tension. "This is insane," Austin said without preamble. "You can't just destroy the company because you're angry about getting terminated. I'm not destroying anything. I'm selling my intellectual property to someone who values it." "Your intellectual property? You developed that on company time, with company resources, using company budgets." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared, copies of all the legal documents Tom had structured 2 years earlier. "Actually, Austin, if you'd bothered to read the contracts your board approved, you'd know that the core patents were always held separately through Richardson Tech Solutions." His face went white as he flipped through the papers. Patent assignments, board resolutions, licensing agreements, all bearing signatures from TechCore executives who'd approved the structure during our budget restructuring. "This can't be legal. It's not just legal, it's bulletproof. Your own board approved this arrangement. They just never bothered to explain it to you because they assumed you'd never be stupid enough to fire the patent holder." Austin set down the papers, looking defeated for the first time since I'd known him. "Mike, please. We can work something out. Name your price to restore system access." I already did. $900 million. From Nexus. Austin stared at me like I just told him his house was on fire. "You're destroying 300 jobs, people who worked for you, who trusted you." That hit harder than I expected. Ryan, Linda, the engineers who'd been sending me worried messages. They didn't deserve to get caught in this mess. Austin, you want to save those jobs? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to offer severance packages to anyone who wants to leave. 2 years' salary, full benefits. And you're going to give me a list of everyone who wants to keep working in AI. Nexus is hiring. He looked defeated. You're serious. Dead serious. Those people followed my lead for 8 years. I'm not going to let them suffer because you decided to play power games with technology you never understood. Austin left without another word. I watched him walk to his BMW, shoulders slumped like the weight of his mistakes was finally crushing him. The signing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, 2 weeks exactly after my firing. Nexus Systems headquarters in downtown Seattle looked like everything TechCore pretended to be. Clean lines, modern architecture, but with actual engineers walking the halls instead of just MBA consultants. Brian met me in the lobby. Ready to make history, Mike? The contract was 52 pages, but it came down to 2 things. Richardson Tech Solutions was selling its AI patent portfolio to Nexus for $900 million, and I was signing on as Chief Technology Advisor for 5 years at $3 million annually. Tom Bradley had reviewed every clause. The intellectual property transfer was clean. The advisory agreement gave me autonomy over technical direction and hiring decisions. No more Austin Pierce-type executives treating engineers like disposable resources. I signed my name 14 times. Each signature felt like closing one chapter and opening a better one. "Welcome to Nexus," Brian said, shaking my hand. "What's your first recommendation as CTA? Hire my old team. Half of them will be looking for work within a month." The news broke 2 hours later. TechCore loses core AI technology in $900 million deal. The stock price dropped 52% before trading was halted. By market close, TechCore had lost $1.8 billion in valuation. The math was brutal, but logical. Without the AI framework, TechCore was just another software company with legacy clients and outdated technology. Investors realized they'd been valuing the company based on assets Austin never actually controlled. Austin Pierce resigned the next day. The board released a statement about pursuing new strategic directions, but everyone knew what had happened. The guy who'd fired me for being redundant had just proved exactly how irreplaceable the right expertise really is. Ryan Foster called that evening. "Mike, is it true? Did you really sell the patents to Nexus?" "Every last one. Along with a commitment to hire the best engineers from TechCore. And they're actually hiring? If you're interested, same work, better resources, and leadership that understands what we're building." 3 weeks later, Ryan and 12 other engineers from my old team started at Nexus. Linda Martinez came over as our new CFO. Even my brother Alex ended up benefiting when Nexus acquired his startup 8 months later as part of our autonomous vehicle integration project. The transition was smoother than anyone expected. Our new AI framework launched 6 months ahead of schedule. First quarter revenue hit $140 million, mostly from Fortune 500 companies that had been frustrated with TechCore's instability. By year 2, we were processing supply chain optimizations for 60% of the Fortune 500. The technology Austin had dismissed as legacy systems became the foundation for the next generation of enterprise AI. Austin Pierce? Last I heard, he was working at a consulting firm in Boston, probably telling other MBA graduates about digital transformation and synergy optimization, while carefully omitting the part about how he'd destroyed a billion-dollar company. Me? I'm 53 now, working on problems I actually want to solve with people who understand their value. Karen and I bought a place in Montana where I can fish and think between consulting sessions. We're financially secure for life, but more importantly, I wake up every day knowing my work matters. TechCore never recovered. They filed for bankruptcy 18 months after I left, selling their remaining assets to pay creditors. The 300 employees Austin had worried about, most of them landed better jobs at companies that valued their experience. People ask if I feel bad about what happened. Honestly, no. Austin Pierce thought he could replace 25 years of engineering experience with MBA buzzwords. He thought firing me publicly would make him look decisive and strong. Instead, it revealed what he always was, someone who never understood what he was managing. The funniest part is that, thanks I said when he fired me, he probably thought I was being sarcastic, but I meant it. because firing me was the best career move Austin Pierce ever made for me. When young engineers ask for advice, I tell them this. Your expertise isn't just what you know, it's how you protect what you've built. Always have contingency plans, always read the fine print, and never let someone who doesn't understand your work decide what it's worth. In tech, they talk about disruption constantly, but the biggest disruption isn't always new technology. Sometimes it's an experienced engineer who's tired of being underestimated and who's been preparing for exactly this moment longer than anyone realizes. Austin Pierce learned that lesson the expensive way. It cost him his job, his company, and $900 million. But like I said, I'm grateful. That thanks turned out to be worth more than I ever imagined.